Good day, everybody, and welcome to episode 95 of the Teacher Emilio podcast. I'm your host, Emilio, and today we'll talk a bit about Australia and international students, visa changes, and all these things that have been happening probably from the past month up until now, July 2024, that have got people thinking. And there are lots of rumors, lots of things being said. Students are not welcome anymore, or you should really consider going to the USA, going to Canada, maybe going to the UK, Europe, New Zealand, I don't know, right? And I thought it would be interesting to cover this because this is something that affects lots of us. I mean, lots of you guys who listen to the podcast are probably an international student. Maybe you are an ex-international student. Maybe you're someone that is trying to get to stay in Australia, and it seems as if, we're being strangled slowly. It's not like very quick, like don't come anymore, lockdown, blah, 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 like it used to be. But still, there is obviously pressure. I've got students who are like older than 35 or 35 plus, let's say, and they are now thinking or like asking themselves how there might be a migration path if they want to stay in Australia, because one of the changes was that now people have to be, I think you cannot be, if you are 35 or older, you cannot apply for my graduate visa, from my understanding. I'll have to double check everything, and I've got a few articles that I read and I took a few notes, so I'll be sharing all of this with you in the episode show notes. This is all like public information and well, in the video description as well. And it's interesting because now, yes, obviously there is lots of negativity, but at the same time, I thought it would be nice to just come share some of the things that I have heard, that I have seen, and also, maybe a bit of, I suppose, not necessarily speculation, but this is going to be a bit of an economics type of video. It's interesting. Yes, there is a lot of negativity. Let's talk about some of the bad things. A lot of the visas are being refused, and people are trying, or like people have applied to a student visa, have tried to extend the visa. They have been denied of that and basically been told politely, please pack up everything, or once your current visa is done, please pack up and off you go. You have 28 days to leave, which is probably horrible. And then you've got other cases where, like I just mentioned before, where people's dreams have been crushed, right? It's like, oh, my plan is to go do some study of whatever, let's say, level it might be, higher education, TAFE, etc. But then it's like, okay, but now I can't apply for a graduate visa, so how am I gonna stay in Australia? Can I stay in Australia? Is that even an option? This is what is happening right now. Another thing is that probably if you live in Australia, or maybe not only if you're here, but you probably noticed that everything is getting more expensive. I think all around the planet inflation is, increasing for, well, lots of reasons that have been happening in this year, the past year. And I guess that's a whole episode on its own. And putting the inflation on the side, or on top of the inflation, one of the other changes is that now if you want to apply for a student visa, you don't pay around $500. Now you have to pay $1,600. So to put it in very clear perspective, you're paying 3 times as much as you used to pay before. So there is no nice way to put it. It is obviously way tougher. Is it impossible? That's another option. By the way, this is not any type of migration or financial advice. Obviously, I'm here sharing my 2 cents with you, but, always talk to an expert in the topic. I'm a teacher, so if you want to pass IELTS, PTE, improve your English, talk to me. I can help you with that. Migration advice, not much. But what I can do is, as a teacher, I can share with you what I have seen happening, let's say over the past few months, what I have noticed with students, and just in a general scope, right? Because everyone is different, and, lots of things have changed, right? It's tricky. Sometimes there is this idea, or like this, let's say, some people may think, oh, because of all these things, Australia doesn't want students. And in case you haven't talked to anyone, I heard from, people that have been checking the news and all that. I guess this is also a bit of politics because the elections will come sometime soon in the next few months. And there is a problem with housing in Victoria. Well, not only in Victoria, let's say in the whole country. So it is not only difficult to get a place, but it's also becoming more expensive because of inflation, because of supply and demand. So maybe you remember my episode, A Rental Odyssey. You would go to an apartment that you want to rent, and then there is 10 people or more, 10 to 25 people, sometimes even more, people lining up in a supermarket to see an apartment, to then apply and wait. And, it was very crazy. And this is about a year ago. Well, close to a year ago. Now it is probably not as bad. From what I've been hearing recently in the past few weeks is that now is the complete opposite. Because of all these changes, now you would go to apply for an apartment or a property and there are not that many people. Is it because of this? Yes, no, maybe. Maybe, most people already found a place. Who knows? But it is definitely a tougher environment. It's becoming more difficult to be a student. But I still think, and after, doing a bit of a research online, I think that, we are still, and I include myself because yes, technically, now I have the PR and this and that, but I'm also an international student, this is why maybe I empathize so well with students because I know how you guys feel, I also came on a student visa. Whenever I was studying, I always had to work. I would work cleaning in restaurants. Well, the list is quite long, but mainly, let's say for a long time, I used to work as a cleaner. I also work in a convenience store. And the point of me saying this is that, I'm just one more international student. This is nothing, too crazy or too different. I guess the only difference is that I came here in 2012 and back then Uber Eats and all these delivery apps were not as popular. So that's why, I haven't done much of that. But the thing that I was going to say is that, during holidays, my holidays were not really holidays. Holiday was to work overtime, to save money, to pay for the next semester of uni, to save for books and all of that. To save money for a plane ticket to go home or to, basically continue life here. So having said that, we are still a very important cohort. Just to throw in some fancy statistics, education, the education industry, let's say in this case us, because a lot of international students, or let's say 90% plus, would come to Australia and we have to pay full price of all the courses, degrees, etc. And international students, education, let's just call it education. It is in the top 5 exports of Australia. Interestingly enough, the year 2022 to 2023 was approximately $36 billion in revenue. And it was, again, in the top 5. This is close to pre-COVID levels, when we had the year 2019 to 2020, that was also around $35.5 billion, which I guess is good. If you see the graph, you would see that there was those pre-COVID levels, a bit of a drop. We had the pandemic that happened not only here, everywhere in the planet, then it went up. But the interesting thing is that now it's coming back to pre-COVID levels, and somehow now there are all these caps, all these limits on international students coming, which is, a bit strange. But as I said, I think we are quite important for this country. And as I just mentioned, I just gave you one example. Lots of international students work in, for example, cleaning, deliveries, restaurants. And I just want you, for those of you who have been here or that you came to Australia throughout the pandemic, I'm sure you know what I mean. There are a lot of things that international students do that maybe local students don't have the same drive or the same push to do. Again, like I just told you, think about some of those jobs, like maybe, and this is something that, for example, I used to do when I was in uni. I would wake up at 4:30 a.m. to get to work at 5 and work from 5 to 9:30 to then finish up work and go straight, to class. And I did that for what, like about a year and a half. And then before that, I was having classes in the morning and then go to work from 6 to 10 and then, rinse and repeat, and I probably did that for at least 2 to 3 years. This is something that maybe a local student doesn't have the same push to do. I have met a lot of Aussies and local students who would do it. There are, of course, I'm not saying that we are super special. Look at how hard we work. Obviously, yes, we work hard, and yes, there are local students who do it, but there is, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I get the feeling that there are way more international students compared to local students that do those types of things. And obviously there is a bit of a need from us, When I came here, I was not living with my parents, I was not living close to friends, I was renting a place, so I have to pay for rent, internet, food, etc. So obviously this is something that maybe some local students, or the majority, don't have to think about. There are some exceptions. I remember that I studied in Hawthorne, which is like 15 to 20 minutes from the Melbourne city centre, and I met one guy who he was Aussie, and he used to live in Mornington Peninsula. So Mornington Peninsula, and he would take public transport. So I think it took him close to 2 hours one way, I think, or let's say an hour and a half to make it not so dramatic. So 3 hours every day on the train to go to uni and to come back. Probably this person didn't go to uni every day for 3 hours, but again, that person didn't think of rent and all these other things. Does that mean that local students don't have any struggles? Not necessarily, but it's different, I remember saying no to so many plans because I was saving money to go on my exchange semester to Japan, or to simply, pay for uni fees, or just to simply save money because, it's tough. It's not easy. And think about the pandemic. Think about lots of businesses closed, obviously because it was hard to continue with the business. But there were also lots of places who closed because they maybe didn't have enough staff members. And international students would do certain jobs that maybe locals wouldn't do at certain prices, or at certain, let's say, having a certain salary, right? Like maybe there might be some local people or local students who say, no, I don't want to work in a cafe getting paid, I don't know, $22. I want to get paid $25 or more. And maybe some local students would have the option to say, no, I don't want to do this. But I wouldn't even flinch. I would just be like, yeah, I'll take it. I remember one time I used to have 4 casual jobs, and well, it was really tough because it was casual, so it was all about surviving. And I guess that is a big thing about us, having that mindset of pushing forward, working hard, and then that translates into professional work, life, etc. So another thing is thinking about money and economics and everything. International students, from what I know, right, we usually have to pay full price of the fees. We don't have to pay it like back to the government or with any type of loan, etc. Yes, of course, international students could borrow money in their countries, etc. But whenever you have to pay for university fees, you need to just basically pay everything in full. Something that, maybe not all local students do. And we could do an exercise. I remember having a chat with Aussie friends who've got kids, and talking about this and the whole thing with international students, maybe the numbers being reduced, me thinking, what is the university going to do? Because think about it, there are classes where there is at least 50, if not more, international students who paid full price fees. You may be asking, wondering, hey Emilio, how much is that? So I just did a quick search. A Bachelor of Accounting here in Melbourne in RMIT University, which is one of the top 5 unis here in Melbourne, is about 42,000 Australian dollars. This is for this year. So again, is every uni like this? Maybe no. But let's just be super generous and say around 30,000 Australian dollars per year. That is that is still, it's not cheap. That's my whole point. You could ask any local student or any friend you have that has got kids, that is Aussie, just ask them, are you thinking of your son or daughter paying for 30,000 cash to go to uni, or are they gonna use HEX or help or some form of, let's say, government funding and borrowing money, paying it by parts, or will everyone just be boom, yeah, take it, boom, paying cash like international students have to do? I don't know, but this person that told me, yeah, man, I haven't got all that saved up for my kids to go to uni, so they're just gonna, use HEX, etc. So that there are a few things that we've got, but one of the other changes that I don't want to overlook this. A big change that also happened is that now people used to have the ability to just be in Australia and apply from one visa to another one. Now I think this is not the case. Like from my understanding, and again, this is what you have to check with your lawyer, it's almost like if you don't have a student visa and you want to apply for a student visa, now you have to leave Australia, apply for the visa, wait for the result, and then come back. Which is so disrupting when you think about it, because some of us, or let's say for example, I'm Latino, right? I'm from Venezuela. I can't imagine thinking of going back to Venezuela. Well, it's about $3,000 to go back, or like let's say about 2,000 one way, and $3,000 return. I have to pay 2,000 to go back to Venezuela, right? And stay there doing probably not much, trying to survive while I wait to get my visa response. And now, the reality is that there is a big group, or like Latinos are a big part. Then of course you've got Asia, and probably like students, I suppose, from China, India, they wouldn't mind that much because, it's like 2 flights. But for other people, for me, it will be like minimum 3 flights to come to Australia. And for those of us that need to travel a fair bit, it will make it way more difficult, way more challenging. And something that has been mentioned in news articles, something that has been said or from the government side of things is like, we want to make sure that now we have genuine applicants. And when you think about a genuine applicant, it's basically someone who has the ability to come, to stay, that genuinely, that truly, that really wants to come and basically stay here. And that also got me thinking, because a part of me thought everyone must want to stay, right? But after talking to other teachers and just hearing stories in general, there are cases, and then this is something that really got me thinking. I'll come back to this in a second. Another teacher just told me, mate, I talked to one of my students who basically told me, yeah, look, because of all these changes, I'm going back. But my plan initially was just to come, work part-time, save as much money as I can, study for X amount of months, or let's say, 1 to 2 years, and then I'll go back to my country. And from what I know, that person was from South America, right? And then that gets me thinking, is like, okay, then I suppose, obviously there are people that have probably, come to Australia, just tried to extend their stay, pretend to be students. There are problems with schools where in the past the students would enroll in a course and never turn up to class, or don't basically go to class as much as they should. And of course that is a problem, but I thought, maybe it's not a big of a problem. Is it big enough so that all these things are happening? Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to wait and judge. Let's see what happens and how do people take this. But the other thing that this reminded me is that I've also had students who, they obviously want to stay in Australia, but one of the reasons they choose IELTS is because they also think, look, I love Australia, but I want to have options. And it's not like, and I've had people telling me this, to my face, well, technically online, but still, in class, like people tell me, look, Emilio, or teacher, I'm sorry, don't take this the wrong way. And this is again from different parts of South America, right? Just to give a few examples, like the biggest, countries being, or like people who have mentioned this in one way or another, are probably people from Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, and Chile, that have said to me, hey teacher, look, don't get this the wrong way, but my country, I know is not amazing, but it's not like Venezuela. I could think, or in my plan, I could think of going back to my country And you know, I was there an accounts manager, or I was a manager of some sort, or I had this good position. So it's not like, you know, that I really, I have to, there is no option, and I have to stay in Australia. I want to do my IELTS. I mean, if I get my IELTS, if I go back to my country, that looks really good on my resume. Maybe that will help me with work. Maybe that helps me with Canada. And I'm not gonna stress myself too much. If things work, amazing. And if they don't work, then that's okay. It's been an amazing experience. And I think it's really nice. Not because, well, obviously it's not that nice, because I think a lot of Venezuelans, I ever since I left, I never thought of going back as an option, and I just went back last year. And as much as it breaks my heart to say it, I think Australia is home now. I would only go on holidays, and well, like I just said, that is a whole other episode. But this is something that I would never think of doing, or even when I left, you know. But again, we have with my country the crisis and this and that, before COVID, of course. So it's interesting that, you know, people from these countries have that second option, or that they don't have the same, let's say, stress, I guess, compared to people from, say, Venezuela, of, oh, I could go back to my country. It's not amazing, but it's okay. You know, life is going to be okay. So I guess, you know, we'll see that there will be probably a drop in students. Are there so many applicants that are not genuine? It's hard to say. I guess another problem could be the thing with the COVID visa, that almost everyone would get a COVID visa, because again, the borders were closed, no one could come in, and the government, I suppose, was just yes, stamping without maybe checking. Does that mean that now it needs to get this stuff? Not necessarily, but it will definitely make it more difficult for people to come. Does that mean that Australia is less attractive? Probably, but I think it's still quite competitive, because this is just me thinking out loud, yeah? When you start thinking of the exchange rate with the cost of living in the US or Canada or the UK, and the fact that you can work in Australia, yes, I think Australia still has got lots of a big competitive advantage there. Let's say in terms of Latinos. Will that be the same with other markets? Like, for example, people in South Asia or people from Asia? We don't know. But I still think that, it's not something too crazy for us to say, oh, yes, I want to still go to Australia. Because again, you have the chance to work. You cannot do that in the US and Canada. So you definitely need to have more money to go there, right? Or it will be even more expensive. Like, Australia is not cheap. But it's not like America is, you know, half price and everything is, no. And things may look cheaper, but it's because of the exchange rate with the US dollar. So I still think that Australia has got like a big, let's say, it's a big advantage. It's something that really will get people to come, because probably for lots of people, just the fact that you can still work, it is like, okay, look, life is expensive, this and that, but I can work, so it is doable. And I think we'll have to wait and see, but I get a feeling, my gut feeling tells me that Australia is still very, very good. Is it like we're not gonna have more students? My guess is there will be obviously less students. The problem that I said before about the rents and the housing crisis because of international students, I really doubt it. And now that I just mentioned that, another thing that I want to say before I forget is that we not only bring, as I just mentioned, the work that we do, that maybe locals don't want to do, and also the fact that we pay cash, but I think lots of international students want to, or like I think the longer people stay in Australia, the more they want to not only stay, but they want Australia to do well. Like me, Australia becomes home for them, and they just want things to go well here. Lots of people start their own business and they become community members. So yeah, it's weird to think that Australia doesn't want international students, but anyways, it's tricky. It's tricky. The other thing could be that maybe students are going to be spread. I don't know if this is some form of like logistics or a way of let's say, controlling how many people come, and then eventually we'll have, I guess, less students coming to Melbourne, Sydney, I don't know, Gold Coast, Brisbane, which I would say they are like the most popular, attractive cities. If you come to Australia for the first time, you almost everybody wants to go to Sydney, Melbourne, Gold Coast, or Brisbane. It's not like, oh, I want to go to Tassie, I want to go to Tasmania, or if I'm gonna go to Australia, I want to go to Perth. Maybe, obviously that is not what usually happens. So I get a feeling that there is a chance that somehow all the things that are happening are maybe trying to spread people. I don't know. Please let me know what you think. Not only about this, but about, all the things that we talked about. And it could be, maybe it's happening the same thing with the PRs, that it wasn't like there were no PRs. It was more that it was easier. I think this is around 2021. I'm gonna say throughout COVID, throughout the lockdowns, it was relatively easier to basically get to get the PR, to be invited for the PR if you lived outside of a major city, right? So there were lots of people that I know moving to Adelaide, moving to Tasmania, moving to Perth, that are in their process of getting the PR, that just got their PR, or are basically with the PR already. So is this a move to do that, to balance and spread people? Maybe, but it's tricky. I would say that probably the next 6 months will tell us. Something that I have noticed, and it's still happening like till today, that more and more people, we are seeing less people moving from big cities, or let's say people have not decided just to move to a smaller city, like let's say Adelaide, who was very popular, or being really popular a few years ago. Now, yes, there might be people going to those cities, but probably like now, communities in those cities like Adelaide, Perth, Tassie, I keep mentioning those three, but those are the biggest ones, maybe Canberra as well, where people are just going there, or that they went there before thinking, okay, I'm gonna get my PR there, and they're in the process of getting it. And others decided to stay, for example, in, let's say, Melbourne and Sydney, and now they're getting invited, they're getting sponsorships. So there have been more sponsorships, so this is, I guess, good news. And this is also one way of saying that if you are a skilled migrant, if you've got a skill, like, if you're an engineer, there are lots of engineers, chefs, and basically looking at the occupations list, if you're a skilled migrant, there is a high chance that you can come. There are some people that have been coming to Australia directly to regional areas, but the thing is, now with more sponsorships, being around, and I know this because people tell me, it's not that I'm making this up. Can I come and tell you a statistic of how many people are getting a sponsorship? Well, obviously no. I'm relying on my experience as a teacher, from students telling me, look, I need to do IELTS or PTE to get my sponsorship. I have been working in this place for X amount of years, or I was just offered a sponsor and now I need to take the test. So this is why I'm telling you this, I'm not making this up. So compared to, let's say, the past 2 years, now 2024, or let's say this financial year, 2023 to 2024, like from July last year up until end of June this year, and even now, there are more people with sponsorships, which is, I guess, good news, If, in case you're listening to this and you want to call Australia home and you want to get your PR, there is a chance, it's not like it's impossible, because people are getting the sponsorship, people are getting invited, and I guess it's good news. That's a good way to wrap up and finish up the episode in a positive note. But look, as I said before, time would tell. In the meantime, I guess we have to continue working hard, pushing, and this is also a reminder for all of us to plan whatever we want to do, especially if you want to call Australia home. Maybe it'll be good to invest in seeing a lawyer or seeing a migration agent, or talking to an expert that can help you with your migration path so that you can stay. Maybe the days when people were able to be just like, oh, I'm just going to study this and do this and then I'll check and blah, blah, blah. Maybe those days are gone because we also, I forgot to mention, we have now the raise in difficulty for the English test. And again, I mentioned that, I think in the previous episode, now more people are messaging me saying, I want to do my IELTS in next year for the next 6 to 9 months, which is really good news, compared to I have my IELTS in 4 days and I need to get 7 on each band. Oh my God, boom, heart attack incoming. So probably a bit more planning now. Is that necessarily bad? Well, no, it's an extra step. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are people who can stay. And, there are also people who maybe don't want to stay, but they can still come, do their studies, and then continue on with life and, whatever goals they have for themselves. And let me know what you think about lots of what we discussed. I would love to hear your opinion, what you think about all this. Have you been affected by this? Hopefully not much. Or do you know someone who has been affected by this? And I guess we can use all that input, to then make a comparison or make a part 2 and see what's happening. Maybe after the elections or early next year, we can do a part 2, we can compare. And well, before going, big thank you. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And maybe you were on your commute, maybe you were just here on YouTube, maybe you were on Spotify, or who knows, maybe you just had some time off. I was part of your day, you were part of mine, and I really appreciate it. This was episode 95. I'll see you next week. Cool episodes are coming up. More interviews will come up. And once again, thank you so much for this episode and thank you for your support. Take care and bye for now. See ya.